Well, at least it wasn't a repetition of the first one, so that's something. Hello my brothers and sisters, my name is Daidarius and welcome to the review of Kingsmen, The Golden Circle. So Kingsmen, The Golden Circle is a sequel to the surprise hit of Kingsmen back in the, I believe, spring of 2015. And it picks up a year after that movie has happened. And what we see is that Xe has clearly gotten quite comfortable into the position of being a super agent, a gentleman spy. We found him that this guy from the first movie, the douchebag who didn't make the cut, he was one of the final three, but he didn't make the cut to become one of the Kingsmen. He's back now and we think, he's in this for revenge, but no, not really. He's actually after some information. And we then find out, if you haven't seen the trailer, then this will be a spoiler, but it's not that big a surprise. It's what initiates the whole movie, so be warned. But we then see later on that everything Kingsman, the headquarters, Xe's own home, which has taken over from Galahad or Harry, and this big plateau, the big house where they're trained, is getting destroyed by missiles, and now the Kingsman is dead. We have Xe and we have Merlin, and that's the guys we're gonna follow here in this movie. Now they're gonna do this doomsday protocol and find out that Kingsman actually has a cousin section in America called Statesman. And unlike Kingsman, who produces suits and everything, Statesman produces booze, because that's the important thing, the most awesome American manly thing, booze. So they get over there because they need their help, and most of all they need their resources to try and find out what this criminal organization who's trying to kill the Kingsmen and why. Because you don't go after a big agency if you don't have some agenda for something else. And this is where we meet the Statesmen. They're more cowboy themed than the more suited gentleman themed of Kingsmen. Which was actually a great thing, that you have these two pretty much identical organizations, but it was easy to distinguish which was which. On the other side of the coin, we have the evil organization, the Golden Circle. Yes, they are the antagonists of the movie, and it's spoiled in the title, so I don't think I'm spoiling it by naming them here. So, no. We have this organization which is actually a drug company, and they have something they want. We don't know it yet, actually. All we know is that they have created this thing that makes people sick for some reason. They want people sick to get their agenda across. At the beginning, it seems like they are this big, threatening organization, but unfortunately, and that's also some of the movie's weakness, they are spread out across the globe, so they are quite thinned out at these different locations that we are gonna visit during this movie. But that's just a minor detail. So here we have Merlin and we have Xe, and they're gonna try and work with the Statesmen, and they have different ideologies and how to proceed with things. That makes it an interesting dynamic. We just follow them on this goose chase to find out what the Golden Circle wants and hunt them down and, you know, prevent them from doing their shit. And that is basically the movie. There's not that much meat on the bone per se on the plot. I can't go into more details because that will actually spoil the few twists and turns that are in there. I found that the movie actually had more to tell than the former movie, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Okay, so here what I liked about this movie. I liked the aesthetic and the visual of the movies. It was pretty much identical to the former one, even though some of it did seem like a copy-paste from the former movie, and that was a bit of a bummer. They were inventive of some of the action sequences and some of the jokes and all. Most of it is quite new and fresh. The other thing is I like the dynamic between Xe and the Statesman. I'm not gonna say which Statesman, there are a few in there, but those you interact with most I like the dynamic there because you can see they were kind of different but still in the same mindset. And what I mean about that is that they have this mission that they need to complete, and they're both very skilled in fighting style and they're quite wit on their toes, but they kind of lack the bigger strategic picture and just trying to wing it all the time. And one of them is a cowboy who uses a lasso and a whip, and the other is a gentleman who uses an umbrella. And you do get scenarios where they're shouting at each other while bullets are flying over their heads, and you just go, could we please focus on it? No, we can argue now. We can argue now. Yeah, that's the perfect time to argue. Yeah. But it doesn't annoy you because it's part of the humor, and the humor works quite well in this movie. It doesn't always land as hard as it did in the former movie, but still the jokes are quite, new, and they don't use the old, if it worked in the first one, we're gonna reuse it in the second one, even though some of them are rehashed, but it is, again, so few you won't hardly notice. And then we need to talk about the action sequences, and the action sequences is quite entertaining. There are some aspects that are rehearsal of the first one, which is the way they're doing the shaky cam, and the fact that we get one of these kind of long takes like the church in the former movie, which is kind of a bummer, even though it will be awesome to have that kind of a scene again. We already saw it, and I just wish they would do something different. But what? I don't know. But the action sequence was entertaining. It wasn't that hard to follow, even though sometimes the shaky cam did become too much to actually get our attention of, okay, that person over there and he's kicking that person, and then. But beside of that, it was actually quite awesome. Now, that being said, I do have a few gripes about this movie. They're not that big, but they are there. One of the things is that the gore effects was not that good. There was a lot of the times where people would get cut in half and there will be no blood at all. And I know they were cut with some high temperature-ish thingy, then the wound will be burned and it won't spill. But still, you see a person get cut clean in half, you expect gore and blood just flowing out. I mean, it's an R-rated movie, come on, you can at least use it, but it didn't. And a lot of the gore effects that were present was just kind of cheap-ish. It looked like that it didn't use that much time or energy to making these effects glow. Well, gore doesn't glow. It's hard to explain. Well, in the former movie, someone even got impaled through the jaw and there was blood everywhere and you actually felt it. But here you don't really feel when someone loses a limb or your lower body or gets blown up or anything. And it was kind of a bummer because that was one of the things that made the first movie so unique and awesome. It was that every time someone got hurt, you felt it. Also, the plot is a bit of a bummer because a lot of things going on in every direction, and at some point you just go, I want to focus this story in a bit more. There are some side plots that actually go somewhere and are important to some of the characters, but all in all, I just wish that we had more of a spy movie and not just you go here, you go there, have some jokes, and that's it. And I know that this is supposed to be a spoof on the James Bond genre, the whole spy thing there, where he actually goes to some exotic places and do some incredible, insane stunts and then go on to the next location. But still, since this is a spy movie, I actually want them to do some spying stuff. You know, espionage, try to spy on people, gather information, try to put together the puzzle instead of just the villains feeding you the information, and that's about it. And this is what actually brings the movie down. It's not as impactful, it is not as inventive, the story is not as focused as the former. And then there's the thing about Exy. Exy is a street guy. He's, you know, from the lowest point of society, he stole cars and he made graffiti or just broke the law on the smaller scale. And the good thing about the first one is we saw that come into play when he was being a spy, and I wish they did that here, because now he's just another Kingsman spy, and I would wanted to see him do something that differentiates him from the other Kingsmen. What makes him unique? What makes him special? Well, it's his skills, you know, his sleight of hand. He can pickpocket things and he can do all this crazy shit that he learned on the street. Try to implement that into the movie, but unfortunately he didn't. And this whole movie actually kind of feel like the first one was so successful, no one saw it coming, not even the creators behind this movie. So now we are obligated to make the second one, the sequel, but we don't really know what to make, and we only have 2 years and what, 4 months, and that brings the movie down. You shouldn't make a sequel because the first one was successful. You should make a sequel because you actually have a sequel in mind. You have the story, you have the feel, the tone, everything. But it doesn't feel like that was the case here, and that's a bit of a bummer. Also, when you get to the emotional scenes, and there are 2 maybe emotional scenes in this movie that don't really land. Is actually my biggest, I don't say biggest gripe, but it's the biggest bummer for me, because in the first one where Galahad got shot in the head, that was emotional. You have connected to this character, you liked him, you adored him, you wanted to be the man, for Christ's sake. But here, when there's something emotional happened, it didn't really land. Except, though, I would say that the last emotional scene where something happens to someone, that's all I can say. It is not, it doesn't hit you, but it is done well and respectful for the character, so you do give it a pass. Now, this does make it seem that I didn't really like this movie. Well, that is not the case at all, because what you end up with is that this movie is entertaining from start to finish. You will enjoy absolute everything. I guarantee, I can't guarantee it because, you know, we are different. But I will say this. You will laugh, you will go, oh shit, oh, fuck. And you will also notice that this will be the most epic cameo of a celebrity ever. I don't give a shit. Find me a more epic cameo than Elton John in this one. I dare you. Just write comments down below. Just give it a try. You won't. You can't. But beside of that, what this movie does really well is that it expands the universe it has set in motion in the first one, just like John Wick Chapter 2 did for John Wick Chapter 1. They expand the universe, they go into more detail of the history of the Kingsmen and also the sister or cousin corporation, I don't know what it is, statesman, and build it up in such a way that you can actually go, I can see a statesman movie coming out where it only focuses on the statesman instead of the Kingsmen. It will actually be an interesting universe to build up if you think about it. So you have the Kingsmen movies and you have the statesman movies, and we just do crossovers all the time. So it's not going to be like you have the Kingsman movie, you have the statesman movie, then you build up to the Kingsman, statesman, Avengers movies. Nothing like that. Just keep it like this. It actually make it an entertaining franchise, especially if they keep jabbing at the spy movies and all the tropes that I've created. And that's also a bit of a gripe in this one, is that it's not as self-aware as the former movies, but it's not that big of a deal. It is self-aware-ish, but not as much as it was in the first one. And again, you shouldn't really compare a movie to any other movies when you're reviewing it, but you can't help it since this is a sequel. But yeah, this movie was great. I was entertained. It has some good chemistry between the characters. Some characters are kind of wasted, unfortunately. It does make sense in the story, but you go, I wanted more from them. The villain is forgetful as fuck and is passive as I mean, the villain doesn't do anything at all. In the first one, you had Samuel L. Jackson's lisping Vincent, I think Valentine. He was called Valentine. And he was actually quite productive. He made this whole little SIM card and he made this bio thing, and he was the one who initiated the thing and actually had to kill his servant. And he also was the one that killed Galahad. He actually was quite productive in that movie. But here, no, nothing happens. And here's also a thing. They build a villain up in the start of the movie and it just leads to nowhere. If they focus more on the Golden Circle organization, I think we'll have a better movie. Make them big and threatening, but in the kind of goofy way. Just again to jab at what James Bond's movies always do with this big evil organization that has everything under their might and can do anything they want, and yet still one fucking man can take the whole thing down like in a night. Do something like that. But again, it's just a suggestion, so. But there's not much to talk about this movie because it is just great entertainment. It don't want you to think too much about it. It just wants to entertain you and grab you by the balls and just scold them. No, I'm not gonna grab you by the balls. Not a thriller. It's gonna take its arm around you and just go, you know what? That's for you, buddy. Yes. So here was what to say. This is a great spy movie if it wasn't for these flaws, which bring it down for me. However, it was still a great time, and I will say Kingsman, The Golden Circle is worth watching in cinema, entertainment guaranteed. So, Kingsman, The Golden Circle, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Comment below and read your thoughts. And as always, until I see you in the next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye! Country road, take me home. You'll get it when you see a movie. To the place where I belong.